Thirsty Thursday. That's what the kids call it. They're still saying it too. I checked. It's still a thing that the kids say. Boom. What's up, everybody? Hope you are having a wonderful Thursday. Hope you are ready for the weekend, right? It's Thursday, Thirsty Thursday. You know the drill. I am really glad to see everybody. I hope everyone is doing terribly well. So, we talked about this yesterday on the show. Mike Bloomberg. We've been talking about Mike Bloomberg a bit this week. And a lot of his stop and frisk comments back in 2015 went viral recently. People have been resharing them. And we went through them. He literally says that stop and frisk is a good thing and that crimes are committed by Black people and minorities, so they should be stopped and frisked. That's basically what he said. And we went through that entire clip. And I said, I was like, in the comment section, there's going to be people that try to justify what he just said by cherry picking his words. And sure enough, that happened. You can go to some of our videos from earlier in the week, look at the comment section. Well, technically he's right, because what he's saying, all he's saying is that places with more crime should have more police officers. Oh, really? That's all he's saying? What about that part where he's saying that people should be stopped and frisked because they commit the most crime? They meaning Black people and people of color and minorities. He's basically saying that white people should have more rights than other people. That's basically what he's saying. What about that part? You didn't mention that part. La 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 la. I didn't hear that part. I didn't hear that part. All he said was places with more crime should have more police. No, that's not what he said. That's not anywhere close to all he said. But he was confronted about it. And here's what he had to say. Here's what he had to say about it.
Mr. Mayor, why did you say what you said in that 2015 speech?
I don't think those words reflect how I led the most diverse city in the nation. And I apologize for the practice and the pain that it caused.
But why did you say it?
It was 5 years ago. And, it's just not.
It was 5 years ago. That was like one of his. It was 5 years ago. Now, that would carry some water if he was a kid. Or something like that. Like let's say he was 18 years old. And he's like, look, it was 5 years ago. Okay, 5 years ago, you were 13, right? If you're 18 years old, 5 years ago, you were 13 years old. And when you're 13 years old, you don't really have much life experience yet. You're still forming your views around the world. You might say something really ignorant and dumb because you don't know any better. And 5 years later, when you're 18, when you're entering young adulthood, you do know a little bit more. And you can say, yeah, that was 5 years ago. I was a kid. I really didn't know what I was talking about. But Mike Bloomberg 5 years ago was still very much an adult. I'm not sure exactly how old Mike Bloomberg is. But that was 5 years ago. That doesn't really mean anything. Anyway.
The way that I think, and that's not the way, it doesn't reflect what I do every day.
Yeah, back to the 2015 comments. So you apologized for using and promoting your policy of stop and frisk, but those comments on that audio, they're more than just talking about stop and, they're pretty derogatory comments about African Americans and the neighborhoods that they live in. So beyond the policy, do you apologize?
Yeah, because he said people in those neighborhoods, unless of course they're white, should be stopped. That they don't have the same rights as white people. They should be stopped. And they should be checked for weapons. What crime did they commit to do that? Nothing. They were just walking and their skin is dark. So they should be stopped. That's what Mike Bloomberg justified in 2015. That's what he promoted in 2015. If you're walking down the street and you're Black, you should be stopped.
Those remarks don't reflect the way that I've governed or the way that I run my company.
Yes, it does reflect the way that you governed because you oversaw stop and frisk. You oversaw it. So yes, it does reflect the way that you governed. And what did it do? It brutalized black people and people of color. It was over-militarized and gross. That's why Mike Bloomberg had to start his campaign with an apology, because of how repulsive stop and frisk was and how miserably not only it failed, but it was absolutely disgusting and racist and discriminatory on every level. So it does reflect how he governed. That's a bold-faced lie he just told. Oh, it didn't reflect the way I governed. Yeah, it did. You're the face of the policy, Mike. Is John Mellencamp going to write a song for you to get you out of that one?
Or the way that I live, and I've led the most diverse city in the country, and the public there elected me and re-elected me 2 other times. So I think
New York City was so underwhelmed by your announcement. New York City despises you. And when you announced you were running, it's like the city did a collective eye roll.
they're pretty happy.
But do you apologize for saying those words?
Sure, the first part of the question, are you concerned that your comments might affect your performance with African American
I do not think so. I think people look at it and they say that those words don't reflect Michael Bloomberg's the way he governed in New York City, the way he runs his company, the way his philanthropy works.
And then he started talking about himself in the third person. Then he started talking. He's like, look, that's not a reflection of Michael Bloomberg. That's not, I mean, dude, honestly, this would just be, if Mike Bloomberg is the nominee, they don't even need to hold debates. Just have one of them hold up a mirror and talk to themselves. Have one debate just be Trump talking to himself, and then one debate just be Mike Bloomberg talking to himself. Because really, what's the difference? What is the difference? Unbelievable. Mike Bloomberg, that's not the way Mike Bloomberg governs. I'm telling you, that's not the way Mike Bloomberg. I think he points to the fact that New York City is diverse. That was like the only other leg he had to stand on. New York City, it's really diverse, despite my best efforts. New York City, still diverse. I tried. I really tried. I brutalized people of color and black people as much as I could. Did the stop and frisk thing, but yeah, you just can't beat the food in Manhattan. What can I say? People just stay here. I don't know. They like it here. Can't beat. It's one of the cultural hubs of the world. People just stay. I did my best. Got all the police out there. It's diverse. New York City's diverse. What an apology. Man, I'm convinced he's sincere. I mean, we should all vote for him. That was the most sincere apology. Yeah, that doesn't reflect me. I don't know. It was 5 years ago. It was just 5 years ago. What do you mean it was 5 years ago? What, you were a totally different person 5 years ago? Or you don't remember because it was 5 years ago? Well, guess what, buddy? It went viral. You can go revisit those comments if you don't remember. If something that somebody said goes viral on the internet, they're going to remember it pretty quick. I don't remember everything I said 5 years ago. Nobody does. But if something went viral somehow, if something I said on a radio show or something went viral, and for whatever reason I'm revisiting it, I'd remember real quick. I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember that joke I used to do. Why is it going viral now? Mike Bloomberg, man, that's boy. But what a week. Here, let's watch the whole thing one more time in its entirety to listen to his non-apology.
Mr. Mayor, why did you say what you said in that 2015 speech?
First of all, that's a tell. The fact he's looking down at the floor, he's scratching his face, that's a tell. That's a tell that he's really uncomfortable. That's a tell that he doesn't have an answer. And that's a tell that he's about to bullshit you. Taking a pause.
I don't think those words reflect how I led the most diverse city in the nation.
Although I'm not going to apologize for it at all. He didn't apologize for his actual words, at least not in this clip he didn't.
And I apologize for the practice and the pain that it caused.
But why did you say it?
It was 5 years ago, and
It was 5 years ago.
it's just not the way that I think, and it doesn't reflect what I do every day.
Yeah, back to the 2015 comments. So you have apologized for using and promoting your policy of stop and frisk, but those comments on that audio, they're more than just talking about stop and, I mean, they're pretty derogatory comments about African Americans and the neighborhoods that they live in. So beyond the policy, do you apologize for those remarks?
Those don't reflect the way that I've governed or the way.
Yes, it does. It does. Okay. It does reflect the way that he governs.
The way that I run my company or the way that I live. And I've led the most diverse city in the country.
New York's diverse. New York's diverse.
And re-elected me 2 other times, so I think they're pretty happy.
But do you apologize for saying those?
He won't answer. He didn't apologize.
Concerned that your comments might affect your performance with African Americans.
I do not think so.
Okay, yeah, and because they know that's not how Mike Bloomberg feels. That's not how Mike Bloomberg feels. Mike Bloomberg, what's going through your head, by the way, if you support a billionaire who instituted stop and frisk, feels no remorse for doing so, justifies the brutalization of black people and people of color for the color of their skin, because of the color of their skin? That's what stop and frisk was. A guy who talks about himself in third person. I mean, this guy. Oh, and by the way, a guy who loved George W. Bush. How is this guy not running against Trump in the Republican primary? You've got to be kidding me. He just switches parties when it's convenient for him. This guy. Oh, and this is who John Mellencamp likes, by the way. John Mellencamp. The working class, farm aide, singer, songwriter, rocker. This is his guy. This is his guy. This Bush endorsing, warmongering, stop and frisk loving billionaire. This is the guy who's going to fix climate change, Mike Bloomberg. New York City was not happy about his run. No one cared because they remember how horrible he was. And you know what? It's weird that for some reason being a terrible mayor qualifies you to run for president, especially if you really screwed over black people and people of color. One of the things Mike Bloomberg and Pete Buttigieg have in common. It's going to be a long primary season, folks. Buckle in. Buckle in. All right. So Mike Bloomberg, what a sincere apology. I think, that was sincere. He means it. He means it. Guys, you probably already saw this on the blogosphere, but check this out. Iowa was such a train wreck that this happened. Somebody took the fall. Boom. Iowa Democratic Party Chairman Troy Price to resign over caucus chaos. I like they got a little alliteration there in the Des Moines Register. How do you like that? Little bit of alliteration going on. And you know what? Troy Price, he did resign from his post as the chair of the Iowa Democratic Party. He has actually already had another job interview. They asked him for his 5 greatest weaknesses, and he only listed 3 things. So there's that. But check this out. Troy Price resigned his position as chairman of the Iowa Democratic Party on Wednesday as the organization grapples with the fallout of a botched caucus process that has left the party and state reeling. In an interview Wednesday evening with the Des Moines Register, he said there was a lot for Iowa Democrats to be proud of. Not sure what that is, but okay. But that the failures on caucus night were heartbreaking. And when I say Iowa Democrats, I mean the establishment there. I don't mean the people who came out and voted and the people who worked for their candidates. Those people do have something to be proud of. The people who were on the ground in Iowa, especially the people who exposed the corruption, who filmed the coin tosses, who questioned what they were doing. The people from the Bernie campaign who showed up at every single caucus to double check the counts. The people who showed up and voted, who took time off work. The people who flew out to Iowa on their own dime to be on the ground trying to rally. Those people, they do have something to be proud of. They should be proud. Because the cheating would have went through unquestioned if it wasn't for those people. If it wasn't for the boots on the ground. Never underestimate the power of the camera on your phone. Because that's the only reason Pete Buttigieg stage didn't walk away with even more delegates. That's the reason Mitt Romney lost in 2012. Remember the 47% comment? We wouldn't have known about that if it wasn't for a dude with a phone in his pocket who said this is messed up and this is going on the internet. So never underestimate the power of that camera on your phone. You guys hear something? It sounds like there's like some drilling outside. I don't know if you guys can hear it. Someday I'll be in a real studio. He told Iowa Democratic Party State Central Committee in a letter that his presence as chair made it more difficult for the party to begin looking forward. Whomever is elected will oversee the completion of the recanvass and recount process and begin the process of healing our party, he wrote in a letter. All right. As an Iowa native, Price worked as political director for Barack Obama's 2012 Iowa campaign and Hillary Clinton's 2016 Iowa campaign. He served as executive director of the Iowa Democratic Party before being elected as chair in July 2017. He was reelected in 2018. All right. Goodbye, Troy Price. Goodbye. Tom Perez. Take an example from Troy Price. Take an example from Troy Price, Tom Perez. All right. So that happened. Troy Price is gone. And so we're going to switch gears a little bit here. And we're going to go over to some tech policy, little bit of broadband news. And this is from Steve Collins. Steve, thank you for sharing this over on the Twitter. And this is from Ars Technica, an outlet that we turn to a lot for our net neutrality news and our municipal broadband news. If you're new to this show and you're wondering what exactly I mean by that, so we cover a lot of net neutrality issues and a lot of issues pertaining to municipal broadband. What is municipal broadband? It is city-owned internet. Meaning that instead of a big cable company dictating your internet, which in a post-net neutrality world is very dangerous because net neutrality is the policy that assures a free and open internet, kind of like flowing water or a telephone call. Without it, they can discriminate how fast certain websites load or don't load, what kind of internet service you get as a customer, and what kind of service you get as a content provider as well. It basically completely eliminates the democratic nature of the internet. That's what a post-net neutrality world does. So municipal broadband takes the internet out of these big cable companies' hands, puts it into the hands of cities and municipalities who will write net neutrality into their charter. So it ends the net neutrality war once and for all. But here's something going on. FCC data fails to count 21 million people without broadband, a study finds. The FCC says 21 million Americans lack broadband, but a study found it's actually over 42 million. The FCC's broadband data dramatically underestimates the number of Americans without access to home internet service, a new study has found. The actual number of people lacking home broadband access is about twice as high as the FCC estimates. The FCC has said 21.3 million Americans live in areas without access to fixed broadband. But FCC data is widely known to be flawed because it counts an entire census block as served, even if only one home in the census block can get service. So the actual number is 42.8 million. Now, why would the FCC do this? Why would the FCC just lie about how much broadband access Americans have? Well, there's a number of reasons. First of all, the big cable companies hate the idea of city-owned internet, like what I just talked about. They really don't like that. Here's another thing they don't like doing. They don't like building in rural areas where they feel like they're not going to get a return on investment. They don't like doing that. So what's likely to happen in those rural areas if people want broadband and the big cable companies aren't willing to provide it for them? Well, they do it their own way. They get city-owned internet. So you're thinking, well, why does the big cable company care? They didn't want to go there. So why not just leave that alone? Well, because when an area gets city-owned internet, other people hear about it and they find out how freaking good it is. They find out that, oh, wait, internet infrastructure isn't really this complicated. We can build incredibly high-quality internet infrastructure right in our city. A town of 7,000 people in Massachusetts did it. Little towns in Ohio and Minnesota did it. Sandy, Oregon has it. Chattanooga, Tennessee led the way with it in 2014. They have the best internet in the world pretty much in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and they pay less than what most people pay for their cable. It's very doable. So what happens is, let's use Massachusetts as an example. Charlemont, Massachusetts gets municipal broadband in a town of 7,000 people because Comcast doesn't want to go there. What happens next? Boston sees that. Cambridge sees that. And now those places are looking to municipal broadband. Sandy, Oregon gets municipal broadband. They see how great it is. Guess who wants it now? Portland, Oregon. Guess what state has the most municipal broadband projects going on? Not California. Not Oregon even, not Washington State, none of these blue states. Tennessee. Tennessee, a very red state. Why is that, you ask? Well, because, again, Chattanooga led the way, so everyone else sees how great Chattanooga's internet is, and they want it. So big cable, they don't want to go in these rural areas because they're worried about their bottom line, but they certainly don't want these rural areas building city-owned internet because then more people are going to want it. So that's why they don't want the FCC to be honest about how many Americans lack access to broadband. They don't want that number to be out there. What's another reason that the FCC might want to lie about the actual broadband numbers? Well, when they repealed net neutrality in 2017, Ajit Pai promised that without the shackles of net neutrality, even though, once again, we have had net neutrality since the advent of the internet. I'll repeat that, because it's worth repeating. We have had net neutrality since the advent of the internet. Whenever somebody tries to tell you that net neutrality was invented by Barack Obama in 2015, and we only had it for 2015 to 2017, that's not even remotely close to being true. We've had assumed net neutrality since the advent of the internet, but it wasn't solidified into law. It was just assumed that all cable companies had to follow net neutrality laws. Around 2014 or so, I believe it was Verizon who led the charge. They decided, hey, wait, we technically don't have to follow net neutrality, and we could make more money if we don't. So they took the FCC to court. They won the court case. They were like, yeah, FCC, they're right. There's really nothing that makes you able to enforce net neutrality. But if you designate the internet a Title II designation, which means it's a utility, then you can have net neutrality. The FCC said, okay. Now, the FCC around this time was run by Tom Wheeler, who was a cable lobbyist himself. He didn't want to designate the internet a Title II because he knew that that would preserve net neutrality pretty much forever. And he didn't want to go that far. That would disrupt his cable lobbying buddies. But the public demanded it. They demanded it so hard, they crashed the FCC's website. So at the 11th hour, Tom Wheeler and Barack Obama did the right thing, and they gave us net neutrality. Because we were loud. Had we not been loud, we wouldn't have gotten it. Ajit Pai came in 2017 under the Trump administration, repealed net neutrality. And we've not seen the true effects of a post-net neutrality world yet because it's going to be a slow boil and because we're fighting it at the state level. California has a net neutrality bill that's out there that's moving forward. Big cable's fighting it tooth and nail. There was a court ruling recently that struck down reinstating net neutrality, but it also ruled that states could bring their own net neutrality laws in. There's a bill in California, there's a bill in New York, there's a bill in Vermont, and there's some other bills out there as well in other states. If California and New York get it, well, that screws the cable companies because they can't unroll packages that don't abide by net neutrality if they can't put it in New York or California, some of the biggest customer bases in the country. So that's why we haven't seen the effects of a post-net neutrality world. People are fighting on the front lines. And because it's going to be a slow burn. They're not just going to totally dismantle the internet as you know it. It's going to take time. So So that's where we're at. But when net neutrality was repealed, Ajit Pai promised a bunch of jobs and a bunch of innovation and more broadband access. Well, guess what? None of that's happened. His promise of jobs was a straight up lie. In fact, it's the opposite. AT&T has been cutting jobs. So has Comcast. Broadband has not been expanding. Over 42 million Americans don't have access to broadband. 42 million. So maybe that's why the FCC might not want to be totally honest about the number of people who don't have access to broadband. Because Ajit Pai made all these promises of broadband expansion, and none of it has happened. In fact, and we've covered it on this show, the opposite has happened. So there you go. The Trump FCC deliberately misleading the people on the behalf of big cable and their own interests. And what's their own interest? Making sure they can price gouge your internet as much as they possibly can. And in a post-net neutrality world, that's exactly what's going to happen if we don't fight to save the internet. And we have to fight on all measures. We have to get city-owned internet in our cities, and we have to fight for strong net neutrality bills in the meantime. We have to do all the above. And look at radio, look at TV. Once we lose a medium, we lose it for good. We don't get it back. And if you think it's not possible that we can lose the internet, if you think it's not possible that years from now we'll be telling our children and our grandchildren what the internet used to be like, where they'll be like, really? You mean anyone could just start a show? Yeah. Anyone could just stream online and it would flow the same way other stuff flowed? Yeah. Yeah, totally. Anyone could do that. I can't believe that. That's not the case anymore. You have to be on Starbucks Inc. now to stream. You have to be on Amazon Inc. to stream any content. Yeah, that wasn't the case. There was this thing called YouTube. What was YouTube? That could be a reality, folks. Shows like this could become a thing in the past. All the independent media you know could become a thing of the past. It's a reality if we don't fight to preserve a free and open internet. And that's why that's the lane I've chosen. To try to fight for city internet, not just in my city of Pasadena, but trying to build a movement all around the country for that. And here you have the FCC misleading you for their own self-interest. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you very much, Steve, for sharing that. I appreciate that very much. Now here's something else. This will make y'all feel great going into the weekend. So this is shared by Lil Green Ghouls over on our Reddit subsection, which again is just reddit.com/r/GetYourNewsOnWithRon. And Lil Green Ghouls said that just this headline alone made their stomach turn. Boom. All right, so here's the headline. Jeff Bezos bought the most expensive property in Los Angeles with 1/8% of his net worth. Let's read that again. Jeff Bezos, by the way, CEO of Amazon. Jeff Bezos bought the most expensive property in LA with 1/8% of his net worth. So what they tell you, if you make 60 grand a year, that's like spending $75 on a house. God, $75. That's what that's the equivalent of. There he is. There's Jeff Bezos. Supervillain Jeff Bezos. According to the Wall Street Journal, Amazon founder Jeff Bezos has reportedly just bought the most expensive property in Los Angeles from David Geffen, another unimaginably wealthy man, for $165 million. It's the Warner estate. That's a wild amount of money for anything. Wow. Now, for context, $165 million is 1/8% of Bezos' net worth, which is what? $131.9 billion. A man worth $131.9 billion pays nothing in taxes. Should we repeat that? Should we just repeat that? A man who is worth $131.9 billion pays $0 in taxes. I paid more in taxes than Jeff Bezos. You paid more in taxes than Jeff Bezos. And look, you don't make $1 billion ethically. And I know some of you love to pretend because it's just been so ingrained that we're supposed to celebrate nonsense like this. It's so ingrained that this is America, United States, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps, individualism. Anyone can be a billionaire. It's nonsense. You can be a billionaire if you have no shame in your brain. If you don't care about how hard you screw people, then and only then can you become a billionaire. Full stop. And I know, oh, but Tom Steyer seems like a nice guy. Just stop. Just stop. You don't become a bit. You have to screw people over relentlessly to make that much money. So there's no such thing as an ethical billionaire. It doesn't exist. Nowhere close. And when we're talking about ethics, I don't mean like, okay, maybe in some of the early years they were a little liberal in the write-offs they declared or something like that. That's not what I mean. Like they screw people over hard in their endless pursuit, psychotic pursuit of wealth. Well, Ron, how do you know that? Do you know that for sure? What can you point to? Here's what I can point to. Look at the stuff Jeff Bezos has done right on the surface. Jeff Bezos is a man who used to have quotas that you would have to hit in the warehouse or you wouldn't get paid. He got away with that by the way he designated the employment status of the person doing the labor. And he got away with it because this was during a recession in Seattle where most people had no other options. Jeff Bezos, in his warehouse facilities, leaves an ambulance there because it's cheaper for them to take somebody to the hospital if they pass out from heat exhaustion than it is to have proper ventilation in those facilities. So he doesn't bother doing it. Jeff Bezos wanted to have machines attached to people's hands, and if they rested for too long or made a wrong move, it would shock them. Jeff Bezos begrudgingly gave his employees $15 an hour as a result of the Stop Bezos Act that Bernie Sanders put forth. But after a little bit of time passed and it was out of the news, he started screwing over their benefits to compensate for that $15 an hour he was giving them. That's what Jeff Bezos does. Jeff Bezos, when the city of Seattle, asked some of the biggest corporations in their city to say, hey, this city has done a lot for you. We have a big homelessness crisis, though, and part of it's because of you being here. Can you give a little bit back for us to help this? And most of the corporations, which, by the way, corporations sure as hell ain't known for their charity. But most of them, it was such a modest request, they said, yeah, we can live with that. Okay, that's fair. Who's one of the few that didn't? Jeff Bezos and Amazon. So they made a big stink until they got their way. And then Shama Zuwant, the socialist city council member who really promoted this and was pushing for this, they pumped over $1 million into her opponent to try to get her off the city council. That's the type of stuff Jeff Bezos does. That's how willing Jeff Bezos is to screw over other humans in his endless pursuit of wealth. And at this point, he has more money than anyone could possibly know what to do with in 10 lifetimes. He has over $131 billion, and yet he still does stuff like that. Because it's psychotic. It's straight up psychotic. So this is all the stuff that he does right out in the open for anyone to see. You can know about all this stuff if you have an internet connection. So if that's all the stuff that he does right in the open, imagine what this dude does behind closed doors on his way up. So again, you don't make $1 billion ethically. You don't make $1 billion without hurting a lot of people in the process. You don't do it. There is no scenario where somebody who is a billionaire should ever be applauded, ever. They should never be applauded. When Tom Steyer walks out on stage, nobody should clap, ever. Nobody should clap. Oh, but he said he's going to give away half of his stuff. He's going to give away his stuff. He signed a pledge. He's going to do that. And these billionaires, they signed a pledge that they're going to give away stuff. You know what that can be traced back to? Back in the day, Andrew Carnegie and people like that, the equivalent of our billionaires today, they were around in a time where there was a lot more religion was a lot more in the populace than it is today, comparatively speaking. And there's this book called the Bible. In it, there's a couple lines like the rich man will have a hard time getting into heaven through the more so than a camel getting through the eye of a needle. And they would read this stuff and they'd get a little worried. So they would give a bunch of their wealth away because they were scared that if they didn't, when they died, and by the way, when they die, they can't take their money with them. But they were scared that when they died, they would go to hell if they were too rich when they died. That's why they did that. It wasn't because they were charitable people. It's because they were scared they were going to go to hell when they died. So when you see Tom Steyer doing stuff like that, that's what it can all be traced back to. So nobody makes $1 billion ethically. You don't make $1 billion unless you hurt a bunch of people on your way up. And under no circumstance should a billionaire ever be applauded. I don't care how friendly they are with Bernie. I don't care if they said something about Trump. And Trump's a jerk, so if they said something about Trump, they must be a good guy. They're not. This isn't a comic book. This is the real world. It's not as simple as a good guy and a bad guy. Sometimes there's only bad guys. And I know that's a tough pill to swallow because our society's been raised on these insipid, homogenized, sanitized comics that had to follow these bullshit patriotic laws. Look up that. That happened in this country in the 50s as a result of the Cold War. But guess what? Sometimes there are no good guys. And sometimes these billionaires are not something to aspire to. They're the ones that we know are criminals the most openly. All right, man. But yeah. So there you go, Jeff Bezos. New neighbor here in LA, Jeff Bezos. Guys, tour dates. I got him. February 29th, San Francisco, California. Get your tickets now. It's going to be a really fun time. I'm really looking forward to our San Francisco show. February 29th. Tickets are available now. March, we're going to Florida. March 12th, Orlando, Florida. March 13th, Tampa. March 14th, Miami. It's right before the primary. Should be a raucous set of evenings. Grab your tickets now. April 9th, I'll be at Concord University. April 10th, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. April 24th, Seattle, Washington. April 25th, Portland, Oregon. May 14th, Indianapolis, Indiana. May 15th, Detroit, Michigan. May 16th, Cleveland, Ohio. And we got dates all throughout the year. June 19th, Louisville. June 20th, Nashville. June 21st, we'll be in Atlanta. Tickets are coming. Hold tight. We should have that available real soon. July 11th, Chicago, Illinois. July 12th, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. August 13th, Richmond, Virginia. August 14th, Washington, D.C. August 15th, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And September 10th, New York City. September 11th, Boston. September 12th, Portland, Maine. September 13th, Burlington, Vermont. October 16th, Madison, Wisconsin. October 17th, Minneapolis, Minnesota. We're coming to you. Get your tickets now, ronplacone.com. If you want to support this show on the sustainability end, please do consider becoming a patron. Patreon.com/ronplacone. For a Give What You Can level, you get all kinds of exclusive content. Patrons only stream once a week. Video clips, stand-up clips, my album in its entirety. That's for a Give What You Can level. And what do you help me do? You help me expand this show. I want to start doing mini documentaries around municipal broadband and city-owned internet. That's how I want to build that movement across the country. I think the documentaries will really help. Even $1 a month goes a long way. I need more resources to make that a reality because I have to hire cameramen. I have to get a production company on board. You get the idea. I also want to do my music interview series, Sounds of Revolution. We did the first episode with Jill Stein. Want to do more of them. Patreon.com/Ron Placone if you are so able and interested. Boom. Let me see what y'all are saying. Sparky, what's up? Chattanooga did it. Oh wait, here. Let me start at the top here. Balthazar, imagine 6.3 Trump versus 5'8" Bloomberg on a debate stage. It'd be the RNC debates of 2015 all over again. Trump would destroy his Republican opponent. Is that how tall they both are? Trump does look like, is he 6'3"? That makes sense. He looks like he's about 6'3". And I guess I've never really noticed Bloomberg one way or another, but yeah, 5'8". I'll go with that. Cool. All right. Sparky, rural electrification happened. Government required it. Okay. Sparky, Chattanooga did it before big money noticed. Yes, they did. They took advantage of a grid. Sparky, Ron, you're not being a good sheeple. Thank you very much. Sparky, public school books are free. Why not the internet? That's a great question. That's a very fair question. And you know what? I'd be fine if it's a city utility. I'm totally okay with just going there. That's the way a lot of other places do it. I'd be fine paying for the internet the same way we pay for our garbage collection, the same way we pay for our electricity, and you pay the city for it. And by the way, Harvard did a study where all the cities with municipal broadband, 100% of the time, pretty much 100% of the time, you get better internet at a cheaper price. You get better quality internet at a cheaper price. Kate, who will, oh wait, no, hang on. I'm skipping a couple. Sparky, Bezos was a nerd selling musty used books. Amazing. Okay. Kate, who will Warren endorse? Probably Klobuchar. Balthazar, Elizabeth's warranty has long expired. Sparky, nerds can be sociopaths. Of course they can. Nerds don't get a pass, excuse me. Absolutely. I agree with you. Anyone can be a sociopath. Let's see. Sparky, Ron, after my first 10 billion, I found Christ, so all was forgiven. Exactly, right? Exactly. Thank you very much to Balthazar, Sparky again, Kate, Balthazar, Sparky. Thank you guys very much for the Super Chat contributions. Lil Green Ghouls and Steve, thank you very much for today's articles. I appreciate that very much. We will be back on Monday. Well, actually, we should be having an interview tomorrow. We're going to be having an interview tomorrow. More information on that soon. I'll be posting about it. Take a look out on my Twitter. Get Your News On with Ron. The regular Get Your News On with Ron will be back on Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. So tune in then. The podcast will be dropping tomorrow. You can get that on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you get podcasts. It's just the Get Your News On with Ron podcast. If you missed anything this week, that's a summary of a lot of the stuff we talked about. Grab it. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Have a good weekend, y'all. Happy Valentine's Day if you got plans for Valentine's Day. I'm cooking at home. That's what I'm doing. I'm cooking at home. Gonna make my special lady a meal. You know. But if you're doing something, have a good one. And in the meantime, you know the drill. Lucy says meow. I say peace. Peace.